What a good and joyful sound it is when all God's children worship with all of the voices that God gives. The words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our redeemer. Amen. In today's gospel lesson, we find James and John coming to Jesus and asking for the best seats at the banquet table. Seats of honor at his right and at his left. They want to sit next to Jesus. They want to sit next to him in his glory. But Jesus tells us that seat is not ours to ask for, that it's reserved for those for whom it's been prepared. Well, it's easy to read this gospel and think that James and John seem rather arrogant, a little self-seeking perhaps. And at first glance, they seem more interested in privilege and honor and status and power. And that's how the text is usually interpreted. When we look at the world around us, we recognize that there's an abundance of this sort of behavior. We see it in others. And if we're really going to be honest, we see it in ourselves as well. So consider this. Consider that maybe this usual interpretation, this usual judgment, is more a statement about our own motives than it is about James and John. Maybe that's why the other 10 get so upset. Maybe, as happens so often in the Gospels, that there's more to this story than the usual interpretation. Maybe there's another way to understand what's going on, not only in the text, but also in our own lives. Have you ever had those people that you really wanted to sit next to? The ones that you would push and shove and sometimes even fight over to get the preferred seat. As children, it may have been to sit next to our favorite grandmother. In school, it may have been to sit next to our best friend. As we got older, it may have been to sit next to the person we had a crush on. And if we're married, hopefully we still want to sit next to as close as possible to our spouse. We find joy and we often find gratitude when we sit next to the people who are special in our lives. We all have those people in our lives that attract us and draw us to them. Their lives speak to us of love and friendship. They show us something about ourselves. Their presence changes how we behave and often even who we are. They call out from us the best part of who we are. And in them, we catch a glimpse of something that is meaningful, something that is life-giving, something that is holy even. So we want to get as close as we can. We don't want to let it slip away from us. We want to be next to these people, not because of who we are, but because of who they are. This is a relationship that Jesus offers to each one of us. And this is why James and John have experienced in their relationship with Jesus. It began that day on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, when they caught a glimpse of something in Jesus, something about him that drew them to leave their boat and their nets, to leave their father and their family, to leave everything behind and follow him. Along with Peter, they would become part of the inner circle of Jesus' disciples, the inner circle of the inner circle, so to speak. They were the ones who were permitted to see Jairus' daughter resurrected from the dead. They were the ones who Jesus took up on the mountain to witness his transfiguration. They were the ones who have seen things that the others did not. They were the ones who were invited in when others were not. And all along the way, James and John have had a different experience, have a different relationship with Jesus. They've seen something in Jesus, something that no one else could show them. So how could they not ask to sit next to him in his glory? In that kingdom that Jesus has been promising all along the way. They were only asking for more of what they had already caught a glimpse of. You do not want to lose the life that they have already experienced with Jesus. Most of us have probably experienced moments like this as well. There are those times when we absolutely get it. Those moments when we know that we know. Those moments when we have glimpsed the beauty, the presence, the holiness of Christ in our own lives. Those moments that change everything about how we see our life and the world around us. Those moments when we say, grant us to sit at your side to your glory. It's not so much a plea for privilege and entitlement as it is a plea of one who never wants to lose that glimpse. Who never wants the moment to end. And for us, this is ultimately the moment of decision. Are we really willing to drink the cup that Jesus drinks? Are we really willing to be baptized with the baptism with which Jesus is baptized? With these questions, Jesus is drawing James and John deeper into their own experience of him. He is affirming them. He's holding them accountable for that which they ask. After all, we cannot share in Christ's glory if we're not willing to share in his life and to share in his suffering and even to share in his death. Christ's glory is not a thing to be had. It's not something that we can grasp onto and hold. Christ's glory is a life instead to be lived. It's not an escape from the world. To the contrary, it is engaging the world in a deeper and more passionate and more loving way, the way that Jesus engaged the world. It is to all of this that James and John are saying, we're able. And it's to all of this that Jesus is asking us today, are you able? In the gospel today, the other 10 still don't get it. Instead, they get angry and indignant at James and John. That it's really not about James and John at all. The reality is that they are angry and indignant with themselves, with their own inability to see and experience the things, the relationship that James and John have seen and experienced. Deep down, the anger and the indignation of the 10 is all about their own longing, their own desire for that which James and John have already glimpsed. They want to say, you're able. We just aren't able to. At least not now, not yet. We all know those times as well. Some of us may even be there today. These are the times when the darkness is thick around us, when our desperation is deep, when our world has been turned completely upside down. These are the times when we've lost our place, when we sit all by ourselves. These are the times when we not only do not know what we believe about God, but sometimes we don't even know what we believe in God. These are the times when we so easily become angry and afraid and jealous, especially of those who seem to get it. Why them? Why not me? Does any of this sound familiar? Does any of this sound like the world we're living in today? Well, if you feel like one of the 10 today that hear this and hear this well, Jesus does not allow the 10 to sit by themselves. He calls them by name to follow him and to be with him. He does not permit any separation between them and James and John. And just like them, regardless of where we are on our own journey, whatever our experiences have been, whatever our questions are or our struggles are, we are each one called. We are invited by name to walk the same path with Jesus. God desires for all of us to be servants of all, slaves to one another. For all of us to now stand as one body of disciples. God is asking us to walk one path, to follow one Lord. Think about that. There's something profound and hopeful in this invitation. The disciples in today's gospel, James and John, and the other 10, taken together, they represent and describe all of us. lives, our faith, our experiences. Are we able? We know James and John. And we know the other 10. We see ourselves in them. So who are we today? Are we James and John? Or are we the other 10? I'll give you a hint. And the answer is yes. Both live in us. Our experience of one does not preclude the experience of the other. After all, let us not forget that James and John, the ones who got it, are also the ones who fell asleep in the Garden of Gethsemane while Jesus prayed. We are the 10. We are James and John. Sometimes we catch a glimpse of God's glory, the life Jesus invites us to live, of a kingdom rooted in love. And at other times we can only long for and hope to catch that glimpse. And both are part of the journey. Both are expressions of faithfulness. Sometimes we're James and John, sometimes we're the other 10. But both are given the gift of life in Christ. And both can become those for whom it's been prepared. Are you able to drink Christ's cup? Are you able to be baptized with Christ's baptism?